What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video we're going to be talking about Excalibur number 20 by Tini Howard and Marcus Toe. And in this video, we are going to learn a little bit more about why Betsy Braddock and Quanon are so concerned about the recently returned Malice and why they feel so invested in trying to save her, and more importantly, why this entire issue, kind of slick, makes a case for rehabilitating Sabretooth. We're going to talk about all this and more right now. But first, let's hit that intro.
Word wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple eyes. You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Okay, so when we kick this book off, we learn a little bit more about what is going on with Malice and their past. It's something that I don't think even I have ever really paid a great deal of attention to before. I'm not even really 100% sure if we've ever really known Malice's origin before, her history prior to being a Marauder, because if I am not mistaken, I want to say when we were first introduced to her, she was already in the process of becoming one of Mr. Sinister's soldiers. So I feel like this is probably the first meaningful story development that Malice has ever had, and it's very sad because we see this character who, we've always kind of thought of as being wholly evil, this character who just possesses other people's bodies willy-nilly, taking control of them. We see this girl who is this, punk rock kid who just, is trying to find their place in the world. They're being a typical petulant teenage child. You see how she's interacting with her mother, how she's being so dismissive towards her. Her mother is just really trying to take care of her, and she's genuinely worried for her. She's not even really being a bad parent. She cares. She really cares about her child. And it's one of those situations where you're watching this unfold. Malice, or rather Alice, at this particular point, she is yet to become Malice by this stage in the game. We discover that, she really just hates her life, and I don't want to necessarily make any assumptions about what she's dealing with on a mental or emotional level, or even that she's feeling any kind of suicidal thoughts or anything like that, but it does make a very strong case for, maybe a talk about mental health and emotional health in that regard. But that said, you can tell there is a problem, and there's a point in this where they're arguing, and her mother is basically telling her, hey, I hope that one day you will not make the same mistakes that I have, and if you do, you will regret it, and you will feel like you have thrown your life away if you keep going down this road. And Alice simply replies that she wishes that she were dead. Not her mother, but herself. And when she slams the door shut, locking herself off in her room, her mother comes back to try to make things up to her, to try to, maybe smooth things over, but it's too late. When she goes into Alice's room, Alice is dead. Now, theoretically speaking, she's actually not dead. Her powers had simply manifested, and for those who are not familiar with the character of Malice, her powers are essentially that she is, for all intents and purposes, sentient, pure psychic energy, and that she has no actual corporeal form. She is simply just essence. The only way she can become corporeal is by possessing other people, and when she does so, the black choker that she wore in life tends to manifest on the body around the neck of the person who she is possessing. And that when she uses her abilities, they are quite invasive and they are considered incredibly aggressive. That when she uses her powers on others, she for all intents and purposes completely suppresses the mind and the essence of the person whose body she's taking over, making them completely unable to do anything against her will. And that in many cases, she has used her powers in very terrible ways against other mutants. Some of her most notable victims were characters like Rogue, Dazzler, Wolverine, and Storm in the pages of Uncanny X-Men number 214, and then of course her possession of Polaris back in X-Factor number 105. So yeah, she's done a great deal of wrong, and she has caused a lot of psychological and, I would dare say, emotional harm to the people who she has possessed. Probably Polaris more than just about anybody else. That said, her powers, though they appear to be psionic in nature, she is, in fact, we get confirmation, she is not psionic energy, she is technically emotional energy, which kind of explains like why she's kind of all over the place when we see her earlier on in this issue when we're revisiting her origin. It's interesting. It's very interesting that, this is how they're playing this up, and it's kind of making Malice into this sympathetic character, a character who, for all intents and purposes, Betsy and Quanon would probably empathize with because of the fact that they have dealt with not being in control of their own bodies or being in someone else's body. They would understand just as well as anybody else, which is why they're kind of taking it easy on Malice, despite the fact that Malice, that when she escaped through one of the gates into Krakoa, it turns out the first person she took advantage of was Emma Frost, which is very impressive considering that Emma Frost is an incredibly powerful telepath. And of course, during a quiet council meeting where they're basically, going over the same musings we've been talking about since Ten of Swords, the fact that Saturnine will not speak with mutants or try and help them in any meaningful way unless Captain Britain is present, but she would not allow Captain Britain to be present because Captain Britain was technically lost in the multiverse and or dead, and she just didn't care enough to want to be bothered. But that's all stuff we've kind of covered. Basically, what's going on here is that Emma Frost takes the opportunity to try and strike down Betsy, and Quanon is able to step in using one of her throwable psychic knives, or more like a psychic kunai, throwing it, catching her right in the neck where the choker is. And ultimately, maybe a more unforeseen outcome of this is that inside this psychic kunai, Malice is trapped inside. This is where the floors opened up to characters like Charles Xavier and Magneto, who comes in a little bit later. Charles learning what is going on, seeing with his own two eyes what Malice has been doing, and for all intents and purposes, he feels that, yeah, all are forgiven and welcome on this island, but those who have done great wrongs or just won't change or just continue to perpetuate violence against humanity and their own kind don't have a place on Krakoa. The only place for them is in Krakoa, and by that he means in the hole where Sabretooth is. Basically equating Malice to a Sabretooth level threat. A character who, honestly, for all intents and purposes, Sabretooth doesn't really care who he hurts. He doesn't care if they're human. He doesn't care if they're mutant. He just likes to hurt people. And that's kind of how they're viewing Malice, that she just wants to hurt somebody. And that is ultimately what she is doing, using other people and taking them over and basically taking away their free will. Now, of course, we know Emma Frost is okay. She sensed the psychic attack, and from that moment forward had kind of placed herself in a psychic safe room of sorts. But ultimately, Charles is willing to give them a chance to try to talk Malice down. But at the end of it all, Charles feels that the only thing they're willing to do for her is to give her a husk body, and she could do with that what she will. But if she rejects their offer, she will have to answer for her attack on not just Emma Frost, but her attack on Krakoa as a whole. Now, Betsy and Quanon do manage to both psychically place themselves within the psychic kunai that Quanon had trapped her in, and they're able to try to interact with her, though for the most part, Quanon is immediately kicked out of the entire conversation when Malice removes her from the psychic kunai, leaving it just down to Betsy and Malice. And Malice, kind of as Betsy points out, is pretty much a teenager with a muscle car, is how she puts it, that all she knows how to do is drive it fast and break it, to crash it. She doesn't really know how to use Betsy's abilities or Quanon's abilities for that matter. She's just doing whatever she thinks she can to try and possess one of them and use whatever memories or thoughts that she knows about them against them. She tries to use Betsy's loss against Iska the Unbeaten and Ten of Swords against her. She tries to use Betsy's other failures against her, and none of it works because Betsy has faced those demons. And even though, yes, she's not crazy about the idea of Iska the Unbeaten being invited to stay on Krakoa, that aside, Betsy is a freaking professional. She knows how to handle these types of situations, and she is able to actually push even Malice beyond her limit. She knows that Malice is nothing but unchecked teenage angst and rage and aggression, and she uses that against her, knowing that she's basically going to lash out and do whatever she can to attack in ways that probably aren't even rational. Even some of the things that Malice is saying, they sound like things that a petulant child would say, that, oh, I don't care if I'm exiled, I don't care what happens to me, I don't care if I die, I want to die, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Like basically being a contrarian. But this all backfires on Malice when she tries to exit the knife and take over Kwanen's body. Because even though she has leapt into Kwanen's body, Kwanen is psychically strong enough and also just very good in general at being hyper aware of her situations at all times and is able to recognize that Malice has leapt into her body enough so that she can even tell exactly when the psychic choker that Malice manifests on her possessed victims is about to form, telling the others to not attack her just yet and to wait until just the right moment, right at the precise moment that the choker would form, so that Betsy can slice it in half and cut it off of Kwanen's neck, sending it into the fire that they had created outside the lighthouse. This, for all intents and purposes, kills Malice. She is destroyed. And in all this time, Charles has taken the time to back up her mind, and as he said before, her husk body was created and they are giving her a second chance. But only if she's willing to take it. And even in this particular point, Malice is still being a petulant child. She doesn't want help. She doesn't want anyone's mercy, despite the fact that both Emma, Kwanen, and Betsy Braddock are willing to give her the benefit of the doubt in the face of Charles Xavier, who is ready and willing to put her in the hole right next to Sabretooth. Everyone has chosen mercy for her actions. They are willing to give her a second chance because, as it is often stated, Krakoa is for all mutants. And this also kind of leads into Betsy taking a little bit more of a vested interest in her, trying to help her rehabilitate. And I feel like this is maybe some form of penance for what she feels she is maybe not directly responsible for, but at least partially responsible for, in regards to how Kwanen has always been treated, in regards to Betsy having possession of Kwanen's body for so long. Something that's even alluded to when we were talking about the Hellfire Gala earlier in this book. Betsy is talking about how all the clothes she has don't fit her body, that she's not built for these clothes, and only to realize that when Kwanen enters the room, that these are all clothes that would perfectly fit Kwanen, but are not in Kwanen's taste, because Kwanen would never wear the things that Betsy wears. And even when Betsy makes a half-assed gesture to let Kwanen have the clothes, Kwanen even says these clothes belong to a time that is better left in the past. And I feel like Betsy is really trying to play hardball here to make up for, even though technically her and Kwanen have made nice, she probably still feels like she has a cross to bear and that she wants to try and help the next person. She's trying to pay it forward in helping the next person who has been struggling with not necessarily the exact same problem, but maybe something just a hair similar. And that would be Malice, even going on to tell her that this is a fresh start for you and that it's not going to be easy. This is going to be difficult, and she has experienced this herself. And now it is her turn to face this very same thing. And the question now is whether or not Malice is going to actually try to make change. And once again, I don't know exactly where Teenie Howard is going here with this. I don't know if Teenie Howard is setting Malice up to potentially become a member of Excalibur, or at the very least become a character who regularly hangs around with Excalibur. It's hard to say at this point, but I'm very interested to see that, what she's going to do with this. She literally took a character that I honestly never really put a whole heap of a lot of thought towards before, but she's taken this character and turned her into something that is, something that could potentially be quite special. Now, where I say this makes a case for Sabretooth is the fact that, as I said earlier, Sabretooth has done great and terrible things. If a character like Malice, who has tried to harm others, who has tried to fight back against mutants, who, for all intents and purposes, if the attack with Emma Frost did not happen, probably would still be running roughshod on Krakoa right now, and maybe even potentially out into the world and causing problems, not unlike what Sabretooth had done, I honestly feel like you kind of made a case for maybe potentially giving Sabretooth a chance. I mean, I feel like at this point, it's been long enough. Let the guy out. Just let him out. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? If he gets out of control, just kill him, res him, or don't res it. Just, it is what it is. But at this point, I do kind of feel like, as is said earlier in this issue, that, when Charles tries to say that, oh, this is not a prison, the hole isn't some kind of a prison, but it kind of is, because, technically you're there, you're aware of everything that's going on, but you could do nothing. I would actually say it's worse than a prison. It's actually, like, I know a lot of people aren't crazy about the whole, put him in the hole. I mean, here's the deal. I agree. A lot of people think that I don't. I do agree with this. I've always said this, even going back to House of X, when it was brought up, I do always kind of feel like it's a bit harsh. I feel it's incredibly harsh, but at the end of the day, it's not my call. I'm not writing this, so, I mean, hey, I don't talk about it very often. But I do feel feel like if there was a time to maybe, I don't know, reconsider at the very least, bringing Sabretooth back, Malice just made a case for it. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, Hulk smash that like button and make sure to share this video all over the internet and with all your friends so they'll know how you've been leveling up your comic book big brain in regards to Excalibur and Reign of X. On your way out, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know what you thought about Excalibur number 20. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.